Okay, here we are. This is season 8, episode 7, 313, 313,
I'm gonna
313.
I'm gonna share at some point the link when I get some stuff built into my Chasing Squirrels GPT. Hey baby, already named it. Happy birthday. Um yeah, I'll share the link with you. So you're able to kind of use it too. I don't want to put it on the store yet. But hey, who knows?
I can share mine with you too.
Yeah, do it. And it'd be interesting. So you're building your specific for your board? Are you building it like, do you know what I mean? Like, are you going that niche? Or are you going to, it's just a broadly useful tool? I am like, what's your,
My approach right now is a broadly useful tool that has, at the very least, the ministry documents built into it
mhm.
so that I can say, for example, like the great chat we had yesterday morning. This is friggin' awesome, man. 2024. You're driving to run a race.
Yeah.
I'm on my treadmill in the basement
Hmm.
and we are talking. It's
Professionally
funny.
developing. It doesn't
It,
even feel like professional development. Is that the cool? That's the cool part of it, right? But it is.
but
It
bro,
is. Yeah,
I
go
could have
ahead.
just called you on the telephone. That's
We could
like
have.
I laugh every time I think of that. I'm like, we could
That's
have
not
just
you and me though.
no, but we could have talked on the phone, which we used to do in the olden days. I'm gonna
Well,
drop. Oh,
minimally. You and I have never been phone call buddies. But here's the thing: when in the world of long distance relationships, what we've been able to do with what would have been considered alternative digital tools, you and I treat like mainstream modalities. We've talked about this, and the fact of it is that at any given time during the day, and I think I only have this with maybe one or maybe one other person where something can, because we are what's it called? We are legion now, as in our digital selves are sitting there waiting to be played with on like on so many different platforms. And this whole idea of the one voice, one tool, one person, one personality kind of mindset is not really how you and I have ever vibed. I think if you were to go back and look at the flavor of each of our platforms, somebody could probably look and say, okay, here it looks like these two dudes do this. It looks like these two dudes do this. So you could kind of categorize the different um flavors of our communication. Like, it's rare that you ever send me a meme on Polo. It can be done. It's just rare, right? It is rare now, it's changed, that you and I ever dig into it. Well, it's because I'm unpredictable. We ever dig into it on Twix anymore. We don't go there. We just don't. Like, I opened it up the other day and I've got 45 notifications. So it's there in the app, but I don't have it on my phone. And mostly it's just like such and such posted something. Like, no one's really reaching out to me there. I'm so in the shadows on that platform. And even Threads. Had a couple conversations, had a few really cool connections with ZBP just about different things. And I go back. Some people reaching out to me there about poetry. So it's funny. I'm really clear about how I use Insta, kind of clear how I'm using Facebook, kind of, what I mean? It's like I kind of have an approach to it, but that's a different combo. You and I are not we chase each other through different conversation tools. So the fact that I'm driving somewhere, I'm like, yeah, we can't do the podcast. The podcast is just the location. It's just the location. And it doesn't even exist really in time. It's just like, well, it does a little bit. Well, no, it doesn't exist in time. It exists in location, as in sitting down, doing, the conversation. I've kind of anointed my computer in the basement as the place to do that. You and I briefly talked about whether or not it could be done on devices. I haven't tried that yet. Like I haven't tried to use my browser on my phone to sort of try and do this. Maybe I will sometime. It'll free me up from the basement. But anyways, yeah, we're having a chat. I'm on my way to my trail race, the Five Peaks. Look at the cool mug I got. What makes it
Love it.
cool? What makes it cooler, at least new for me? Actually, it's a tumbler, right? Tumbler. Um, comes with two lids. This lid, that's like your standard kind of snappy lid. But then it comes with another one that I can put a can of something in here and put the lid on top and it'll keep my can cold. Oh, that's kind of cool. I knew those things exist. I've seen them in the commercials, right? But now I have one. We'll see how long before I drop it. Dense, it breaks. It's kind of nice to keep the coffee warm down here in the basement, though. Back to your joy. I'm driving. It's like
You're driving. I'm on the
7:30
treadmill.
a.m. in the
Yeah.
morning. Yeah.
And we're going back and forth about literally professional development,
Mm-hmm.
like our own decoded style. And when I got off the treadmill, I went straight to the laptop because I think I showed you what I was dealing with in the basement because there's no time at work to do the work, so it has to be done somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And I went right to my laptop and I went to my GPT and checked to see if I had already uploaded the UDL document into it,
Mm-hmm.
and I had. So it's just it's a cool little place, a digital place for me to bounce ideas off of it. Because, like I told you, I'm at work, the computer's in front of me, and I don't necessarily have access to the people that I might need to talk to about certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk to chat. Now, I mentioned this in the on ramp that I was having an OSR question. So I just went and got all the OSR information from the internet and plugged it into my GPT. I was like, okay,
Right.
great. Now I don't, yes, of course, I'm going to still need to communicate with humans and go back and forth, but I'll have some knowledge because I can easily say to chat, um, in one paragraph, I need you to tell me what I need to know about my OSR issue that I'm having right now. And it'll give
Yes.
me something. And whether it's good or bad's a whole other thing, but at least I've fed it. I've fed it the real deal information, and then I'll let it filter through that. I'll let it do all that um, mindless work. It, I even hate saying that because me reading through the document, I believe would be beneficial, but it takes up time that I don't want to give right now. So
Yeah.
I let chat do that in an instant, give me the Cole's notes. So basically, it's like, this is what I want to do. Can I do this? And chat says, you can. And then I say, give me the evidence that I can do that. And then chat gives me the evidence from the document on where, like, what the document says. Interpretation's a whole other thing, but chat says you can do what you just asked me if you could do because it
Yeah.
says in the document you can. I'm like, beautiful. Okay, that's the kind of information I need to know to go into conversations with other people who say, I wonder if we can. I'm like, we can. The document says we can. Well, how do you know that? Well, on this page it says this. And then it's like, well, we could infer. I'm like, yeah, yeah, we can infer all we want, but the document doesn't straight up say, no, you cannot do that. So then it's open to some interpretation. And I'm a little bit more knowledgeable now than I was 10 minutes ago. Because the humans I talk to all said, I don't know. They're like, I don't know where to start. I don't know if we can do that. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And then I came back and said, I know. And I tell them, and then I'm like, now, what I don't know is what my district has done in terms of policy, process, procedure around this, because it's such a minute little question, but I'm sure there's a real deal answer. It's just nobody knows where to dig yet. But at least we know certain things can be done. They're allowable because the ministry says they are. Now, how does our board take that and work with it's another thing. But I'm loving this. I'm loving this. And you reminded me because I don't know why I forget that I can use it on my phone. I
Mm.
can
I
talk to it on my phone.
Yes.
So
Yes.
next stage. Here's the other thing too. At work, I don't really carry my phone around anymore, but I need to change that practice because my phone is my lifeline to my family if there's an emergency. So I really need to have it, even though they all know where I work. Like I actually work
Mhm.
in a physical space. Um, the phone is the first go-to, I would say, without all the red tape involved in the workplace. Oh, I need to use a workplace phone. Oh, if my kids are like, I need to go to the office to ask if they can call my parent or whatever. It's like, no, just find a quiet place to pull out your phone and contact me in an emergency, not for some baloney business.
I'm looking forward to I'm looking forward to um, being in a professional development scenario and having somebody ask something, and I can just discreetly or obviously drop it into my GPT, and it's like, there it is, and I can move forward with it. And for someone to say, you know, even in a generalized kind of sense, how did you get that answer so fast? I'm not gonna say it was in my head. I'm gonna say I created I created my own AI. Like that. You don't hear teachers say that too often, right? And like, what do you mean? Like, well, I fed it, I taught it a bunch of stuff about our board and special education, and now I can ask it questions. I could ask you a question right now. What would you like to say? What would you like to say to chasing squirrels? It'll find the stuff a lot faster than going into Google or opening up your computer and having to, find the document, whatever. It gets you. And if anyone ever asked me, like, why would you ever do that? I said, I would probably just say, because it gets me into action faster. And I'm old. So there's a wellness factor. I don't remember everything,
Mhm.
but I'm still willing to dig in and do the action. I want to do the action. I want to get to the action. And I understand that it's not about the reading that takes a lot of time. It's not, because it's not the reading and the research that takes a lot of time anymore in my job. It's the actual things that I'm expected to hand in and do. So if I can have something help me out, remind me to kind of when I need to do those things. I love the fact, and we were talking about this in the on ramp, I'm just going to start feeding it deadlines from my school year. And then when 24, 25 rolls around, I'm going to ask it to spit out the deliverable deadlines for the paperwork that I have to do within the IEP process, whatever I title it. I'll figure out the consistency so I can always meta tag it and find it again. I'm going to say update it for 2025, 2026. There it is. I'm not having to go back through a freaking Google Doc calendar and do it all by hand. I'm not having to do Control F to find the actual things, right? You said in the on ramp talking about, seeing your bill, your credit card bill, because this is what we're talking about is the paid version. I really don't think I can go back to the 3.0 because it's the 4.0 that also cracks open the access to all the other GPTs that people have already created and the ones that are more commonly used, right? Like there's a space there that I can absolutely see the utility for me. Absolutely, I can see it. I think I told you my first experience with ChatGPT when I first started using it. Big spider on my monitor. Go, buddy, go. Was was 2 years ago. 2 years ago in March, when I told you I'm gonna do a half marathon, and I immediately went to ChatGPT. I said, build me a program that would start right now in the wintertime, where I would put put in. I said I put my age range. I put have to work out inside until snow finishes, and will slowly taper me up to running 21 kilometers. And I followed it, and I ran a half marathon. I just held to the plan. Just held to the plan. I could have searched out all those bits and aggregated myself, but I wanted to get to the action faster. There was no use in me, just like I told you, I was at that PD session, and our activity in our PD session was to read this this policy document on our new assessment. And the actual activity was read this because you'll find it really enjoyable. Take my word for it. It's not what the board said. It's not what our instruction was. It was read and find the salient points. And I'm like, really? And then we have to do something with the salient points. We're never going to go back to assessing our enjoyment, our intensity, our actual quality of reading. So who cares? We just have to get it. We just have to get to the points. And if we're just getting to the point, well, let's get to the point. So I fed the document into ChatGPT and it spit out the top 5 salient points from it. Boom. And then we're in discussion mode, which got us closer to talking about how we're not actively using this assessment document in a way that we should be. So then I fed it back in. What might be some common challenges in trying to implement this for a high school teacher in York Region in Ontario? Spit that out again. I was like, here you go. Let's put this into our graphic organizer that we have to hand in. Done. And we got to the conversation. We got to the action faster. And now I've got this great note in ChatGPT. Like I have these things that I can go back to and I can review, which likely I'll teach into my into my chasing squirrels GPT. I might as well put it in there so it accesses its own successful analysis, right? So it's cool. I like this.
It is cool. I like this too. You were talking about when I got my bill and I saw how much I was paying for this service, and
Mhm.
I told you it's awesome. It's the best 30 Canadian dollars I've spent in a long time because I have access to a tool that operates a certain way that can feed me what I need when I need it so I can just keep motoring along. And not only can it feed me that, it's not just like an end product type of thing. I'm not always just looking for answers. I'm bouncing things off of it. It's like I'm talking to you, but you're not there. I'm talking to a machine
Mhm.
that can do things a lot faster than we can and activate. It keeps me kind of limber up here, right?
Mhm.
It keeps me going. It keeps conversations going. I don't have to write down 100 wonderings. I can just say,
Mhm.
"Hey, I'm wondering this. Tell me your thoughts." Like I talk to it like I'm talking to a friend. This has always worked for me. I talk to it like I'm talking to a friend. And whether it's right or wrong, it provides me with feedback that then I can do something with in my head. So it's kind of
Gotcha.
keeping me going the whole time. And I really like that. I really like that. And it doesn't him and haw. And it doesn't say, well, maybe this and maybe that. It feeds the side of me that wants black and white, right? It feeds that side of me because my whole job is gray. Because you ask 3 different people, you get 3 different answers, and then you gotta figure out. Like one person said to me with one of my questions last week, they're like, "Yo, this is what I do, and I would do this because at the end of the day, I want to know that I did all I could for this kid."
Mhm.
Like that's interesting because I'm sure if I talk to another person, they might not even have that component attached to them. Like they might have no, I did these 3 things, I'm done. There's not that added piece of, well, how are you going to feel at night before you go to bed? Did you serve this student properly? Was justice served? Like there are these different like elements. Sometimes I tell you, going the extra mile, I feel tired and I think I'm not doing this. And what ends up
Mhm.
happening to me is I just need a break from the situation. Give me a few hours without me dealing with it, and then what ends up happening is I go the extra mile and a little bit more, but
Yeah.
that's just because I'm gassed up again. So it's just sometimes I need the black and white. I don't need, well, talk to this person, then talk to this person. And I said this the other day to my program head. I said, look, this is great. Do you know how much time I'm spending on this that I'm not spending with kids? And she's like, I totally understand. And I said, I'm not saying this isn't important. I'm just saying the constant nobody making a decision. I said, I make a decision, but then if it's the wrong decision, people are going to dissect it and they're going to want to make sure that I followed procedure. So I'm following procedure as you people tell me it's procedure in order to minimize the issues that may come if this all explodes. That takes time. And she's just kind of laughing at me because I'm literally telling her that. Like, I'm like, it's taking up a lot of time and I'm not getting any answers. I just keep getting talk to this person, talk to this person. So at the end of the day, if it goes south and somebody says, hey, let's break this down. What happened? Well, first I talked to Jimmy. Then I talked to Clank, and Clank said I should talk to, and it was just a bouncing me from person to person to person until finally I say, and then what I did was I sat down, I reflected on all the people I spoke to and the suggestions they gave me, and I made a decision that erred on the side of caution as I saw it. So if my
Mm,
response was too liberal, it's because I was trying to be open. I was trying to cover as much ground as I could in order to minimize harm. But then at the end of the day, some people might be like, we don't care what you did. You made the wrong choice kind of thing. And how do we fix this moving forward? And what they're not expecting, which is what they're going to get, is I need you to tell me what that means. Because for you to sit across from me and judge me and tell me it's wrong, no problem. I can accept that. But what I will not accept is learning how to do it right next time. So if you don't even have an answer on how to do it right next time, we got bigger problems. And I'm calling them out. Here are the
mm,
I've got the receipts. I'm here are the receipts. I want to know how to deal with this. Don't tell me there's no answer. And because there may not be, but I'm like, no, no, no. I'm not getting smoked twice. What do we do next time? Well, we might do this based on this. And I'm like, oh, based on. So this whole thing is based on X, Y, and Z, these variables that keep changing. So what's the probability? Let's get a math teacher in here. What's the probability that I make an error again or anybody makes the error? Like it's one of those things where sometimes there needs to be compassion. I'm not saying that people aren't treating me compassionately. I'm just saying for someone like me that likes to get stuff done
mhm,
and likes to serve, there's a lot of variables that are constantly moving and changing and shifting, and there's nuance. And I'm like, well, right now I'm in the mode where I try to make decisions that are thoughtful and not so much a hammer dropping.
mhm.
I'm trying because if I drop the hammer and it goes wrong, then it could go really wrong. So I'm trying to minimize how wrong things can go, if that makes any sense. I'm trying to be,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm just trying to be open to everything. And it feels darn good when it's not open. So a couple of times this week, I've had to be black and white with a few students,
Mhm,
and it felt liberating because it was clear to me at that moment and clear to the student. There are two options here, A and B. You get to choose which one. You get to choose how I treat you. Your call, kid. I'm ready to go. That's where I'm
mhm,
at right now, you know? And then I was telling my wife this story. Three kids came to the room. They were quite energetic. And I said to them at the door, settle down. You're not coming in here until you settle down. One kid wouldn't settle down. So I looked at him and I gave him the black and white. I'm like, this is what's going to happen next. I've asked you twice. I've been polite. I'm taking my time with you. I don't know your circumstances, so I'm trying to be extra caring. I'm talking like this to him, and his friends are looking at me like I'm nuts. But his friends have experienced me before, and they look at him, they're like, you need to shut it down now. So even their friends were like, whatever it is you're up to, you can shut it down because he's dead serious. And then the kid
mhm.
shut it down, but I'm like, why do we have to do this? So then they came in the room, but I felt liberated because I wasn't in the ether. I landed and I'm like, this is what's going to happen next if you can't settle down. It felt good. It's because I don't get to do it. Um, we've got a couple of visitors. Rochelle's here.
Nice.
Good morning, Rochelle. Bon matin. Gary's probably driving to somewhere and he's hanging with us so he can't type. It's my favorite. I was telling a story to somebody the other day. I'm like, Gary was driving. We were hammering him. Gary, speak, speak, speak. And the poor guy was driving. I got a good laugh from that. And then Rochelle said that she hears me about the phone and needing it to use it for family emergency at work. I'll tell you, I've had my phone away for most of the month and a half I've been at my new school. And the other day I had it with me, and I got to tell you, I loved having it with me because it helped me. I was with a student who was not interested in anything, and I needed I needed a timer. I said to the student, "Okay, look, you can keep doing blah blah blah. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Does that sound fair?" Student says, "Yeah." So I put the timer on my phone, and I put the phone right in front of the student so they could see the time. They could see it happening. I'm like, "This is awesome. I'm so happy I brought my phone in this morning." And then when the time was up, they did not comply, which I figured they wouldn't, but I tried. I'm trying things. And and then I was like, "Hey, you have a pet, right?" And they're like, "Yes." We start talking about their pets, and as we're talking, I find a picture of my pet, show it to them. "Hey, this is my pet, and here I am. I'm trying to build. I'm trying to build." I couldn't have done any of that with my phone. I couldn't have done that. I would have just been sitting there like a lump, twiddling my thumbs and talking. I'm like, "No, this kid. I know this kid's a visual person, hands-on person. I need to." So anyway, in my effort to model for students, that you don't always have to be on your phone, it's kind of hindered me. So the phone's coming back. The primary purpose is that I can be reached by my family. I'm telling
Mhm,
you right now, I know we don't swear on here. We don't say things that are going to get us fired. I'm going to say it right now on season 8, episode 7, 313. I don't care what anybody says. I'm going to have my phone so I can communicate with my family if I need to.
mhm.
So shoot, if I get fired, Chris, this is why. Um,
I use mine all the time in class.
I'm trying not to, just
Why?
be, well, because we're telling kids not to. But
What we're telling kids not to is to use it inappropriately.
right. So I was just about to say,
Sorry.
I'm
Sorry to
not,
interrupt
no,
you.
no, it's all good. I'm not surfing Facebook or whatever.
Mhm,
I'm using Chat GPT or my timer, or I'm getting something to demonstrate to a student or show a student. So you're right. Um, you're right. There are some,
I've chosen to exist in the irony, and this came up in conversation where so in my class, I have a lot of jargon, and I make it up myself. I've told you this before. The reason that I do is that it stings less than the hard line statements and directives that school has sort of laid on kids forever, ever, ever. Don't do this, don't do that. Like it's just trying to get away from the stuff that the kids have an automatic repulsion to, or they have an automatic behavior that is the measured response to having their preferred task changed, right? It's transition understanding. So, my models for the kids are I have verbal, I have visual, I have physical models of reminding when we're transitioning, moving from activity to activity to when I'm about to start teaching. It's I think I'm model rich in a lot of ways, knowing full well that, not every kid's going to be hearing you or seeing you or actually, taking that piece of paper from you, whatever it is. So one of the things I say is go flat, go flat. And that last year I used to say sandwich, but I like go flat better. And go flat means close your laptop. Or if we are on devices, it's face down on the desk, go flat. And the great thing about it is the language is neutral enough that a kid could say it to another kid, and it's not loaded with insult or somehow it's diminishing the other kid. It's just a pure instruction, go flat. And I just had this conversation on Friday because I think I've told you I have a whole slide deck of pro tips. I'm like, the pro tips are your basic criteria for just operating well in school. And I have it color coded red, yellow, green, and white. Kind of like if I'm just introducing a pro tip, it starts off as a white slide. It's a Google slide deck. It then becomes it either goes yellow or green or red afterwards. Red tends to be like, we really got to get this done. Yellow is like, it's kind of working, but it's not working yet. Green is like, you're rocking it. So I'll go through them and I show them where colors are shifting from different, like where, okay, this was yellow, you've turned it into green. And the kids have become a little bit addicted to seeing their stuff turning to green. They visually enjoy, they enjoy the visualization of the fact that they've formalized or created a new baseline behavior for themselves. I don't have any kids in my crew right now that are pushing back. They get it. The conversation on Friday was, I said, why do I ask you to go flat? And they're like, well, they kind of looked at it, and this is a good self-assessment. They said they did talk about productivity and focus, but they also addressed the negative side, as in because we have to, right? That's what the school tells us to do. I said, well, there's one that I haven't really told you much. I actually do ask you to go flat because I'm trying to train you to not go flat. They're like, what do you mean? I said, well, the actual ideal, if this is kind of like the 1.0, the ideal is that you don't go flat, but that I've done enough work with you to recognize where we don't have to do the go flat as a transitional model to you just looking up and paying attention to me at the front of the classroom. I said, for some students, for some of you, you know, if ADHD is your thing, any little movement in the classroom or sound in the classroom can draw your attention away, or you can start to lose time. I said, we all understand that just as far as our identities go. The strategies that you use to maintain focus, though, is where I want you to get to. I want every one of you to be in this classroom with your laptop display up and to be able to be working or note taking or sort of accounting for your learning as your learning's happening. For some of you, though, as soon as the laptop goes up, you go right to your videos or your video games and you let it play. Like you don't actually, you divide your focus, and then you tell me something like you're multitasking, which I tell them is impossible. You can't multitask your brain in a way that you think you can. You can multitask dishwashing and roasting a chicken and doing laundry, but you can't multitask your learning in the way that you're saying. They're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you can't listen to me. You can't listen to me and listen to music at the same time. Yeah, we can. I'm like, no, you can't. The science is sound. No, okay. I'm like, okay, you do your research and come back and talk to me. I'll tell you can't. You're going to choose which one you would prefer to listen to. Or your brain is just going to do it. So you're going to do it actively, you're going to do it passively. But you actually can't hear my words and listen to every single word that's playing in a song at the same time. Your brain creates a partition and it's going to choose which word it gets in, which is sometimes why your memories become jumbled. Wait a second, was I actually eating popcorn while I was studying, or was that when I was watching the movie? It's where you actually are taking in bits of noticing and putting it all into the same memory. The kids are like, whatever. I'm like, it's truth. But I like this because when we talk about using the phones in class, I use them because I need to show the kids that there's a way to use it in class in an effective way, and then put it away and then come back to them and then take it back out when it's useful and then come back to them. You're right. I'm not on Facebook, but I would say that even though we do have this rule of no mobile phones in class, which is almost the exact same rule as it used to be, the only difference now is that we have a punitive pathway that the ministry is approving of. And an affirmation from our own union that if something happens to that phone when it's in our possession, we will not be charged for it. We cannot be held accountable for it. That's different language, because I have 3 colleagues from back in the day that actually lost phones from kids, lost, stolen, disappeared, and they had to pay out of pocket to replace the kid's mobile phone. So even that liability has been pulled away. So, but I have to use it in class. I have to use it because I need it. So, Rochelle, exactly right. Go flat. Eyes on me. Go flat. Stop chasing squirrels. Like, they get all this jargon. I have so many little, protect the weekend. I've blah, blah, blah about it but yeah, the go flat is super simple, right? And then and then use waiting time. Use the standard waiting time, right?
So I wanted to share that with you because Rochelle's saying she really likes those simple instructions,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes sense. Rochelle did drop some other things that I want to
Do
share.
it.
She
Do
said
it.
that the message was that even staff are not allowed to use their phones during the school day.
Mm-hmm.
And then she goes on to say that this week she wasn't about to wait until recess to use her classroom phone to find out if her child was at school after receiving an email stating that her child was not at school.
Mm-hmm. I would like to know what the progressive discipline would be. I
I'll
think
tell
that
you
would
right.
be, well, So yeah, I would like to know what the progressive discipline would be for teachers, for staff.
I guess I'm getting fired times two today. So what I would say to you is, I said this in my polo to you yesterday. Um, I would venture to say that the difficult conversation wouldn't even happen with me if I was walking around with my phone all the time at work. Now, I hate to say me because um, I completely respect my administrative team at my school, and I'm not saying that they would not do their job. What I'm saying is, you and I have talked about this. We've seen it in our multi-year career. There are policies and procedures in place, and I from what I've seen is that the courageous conversations that need to happen between boss and subordinate rarely happens to the people that it needs to happen to. So that's the first step. Somebody needs to have a conversation with you. They're not just going to walk in and tell you you're fired. They're going to be like, we need to talk. I've noticed that you have your cell phone out a lot, and I don't know what you're using it for. I don't know if you're using it to help with your teaching or to help with the student learning, but it looks really bad. So I want to talk to you about it. I don't think anybody's going to do that with me, whether I'm in the school I'm at now or somewhere else, unless I have a really horrible relationship with my administrator. I don't think it's going to happen. So there's step one. Because in order to go down that road of progressive discipline, it starts with a conversation. You don't just get slapped with strike one. No, let me call my union about that then, if you decide you're too chicken to have. And I say chicken because it's conflict and people are uncomfortable to enter into conflict. Now, I don't know about Rochelle's administrator. I've never worked with her. Um, I doubt that they're going to talk to Rochelle about about this because Rochelle had to use her phone before recess to check in on her daughter. I highly doubt anybody's going to talk to Rochelle about that. Point being is that, like Rochelle said, we've been instructed that we can't be on them either, which is ironic. It's actually kind of ridiculous, but I just wish they would say, you know what? If you're going to be using your mobile device, it's not to be checking your socials and shopping while you're teaching. I don't understand why. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't get said because it's seen as not being professional. I don't think there's anything unprofessional by saying to your colleagues, we shouldn't be doing online shopping or communicating with a friend or checking socials while we are working. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing to say to people. Um,
Mhm,
but if there's an emergency, and I know emergency can be defined in different ways. If one of my kids is trying to reach me, I want to be able to respond to them. Or my wife, if she wants to reach me for whatever reason, I want to be able to respond to her. And I'm not completely stupid. Like, if my wife texts me and says, hey, I have a question, let me know when you're free, I'll probably wait until the period's over because that's not an emergency, but I will get to it. I won't
mhm,
wait until the end of the day to do that. I will get to it the next natural break that occurs. But if she says she's having an allergic reaction or something, I'm not going to wait until the next break. I'm going to excuse myself from whatever's happening, and I'm going to find out if she's okay or not. That's what I'm going
mhm,
to do. Just like sometimes students say to me, I really need to contact my mom because I need to da 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 da. And I'm like, they could be lying. But you learn. I think you learn about how certain people operate and what they do, and so there's room there to say, okay, I can give you 5 minutes to do that in this much time from now, or finish this up so that it's out of the way, and then let me know you're done, and I can give you a space to make that happen. There's
mhm.
ways to operate. But when Rochelle says what she said, um, it's like, okay, well, who's gonna have that difficult conversation with me? Who's gonna have that with me? Because I've seen a lot of people won't have those conversations because it's conflict and they don't want to
Mhm.
enter into conflict. That's where I'm landing there for now. I'd love to hear from Rochelle and Gary on that.
Mhm.
Um, I want to, while we wait for that, I want to go back to something you said earlier about being old and maybe not being able to keep everything in your head the way you once were able to. I have completely surrendered to this idea. Like, I've surrendered myself to the notion that I can remember everything.
Mhm. Wait, surrendered to the
I've
notion that you can't
I've
remember
surrendered.
everything,
Yes,
or
I've
that your memory is finite, that your memory is actually finite.
my memory's finite and my memory at work is taxed. So if I let's
Well said.
I'm responsible for 150 students approximately, and I'm constantly getting emails about student issues, teacher issues, school issues constantly. Like
Mhm.
it never stops. I can't stay on top of that in from a memory perspective. So what I
Mhm.
do, and you know this, I have my to-do list and I write down the things that are for me to do. Not like, Roland, can you help with? No, Roland, you must. Goes in the book. I write it down so I always have a list, and when I get it done, I cross it off. So if it's
Mhm.
crossed off in the book, it means it's done. It means that there's probably an email. That's how I kind of track it. I email people and say, I did this, this, and this, or I will do this now. I'll get back to you when it's done. So there's always like a closed loop. So this is hilarious because if my vice principal would say to me, I need to talk to you about Jimmy Two Shoes. I'm like, okay, what
Jimmy.
do you want to know? Well, Jimmy, da 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 da. I say, you know what? Thank you for that information. Let me grab my computer and let me find my emails about Jimmy Two Shoes, and I can tell you, I do not recall what it is you're talking about right now. I don't. So, but I'm sure I tracked it some way. So let me find the tracking, and then I will tell you what I know about what you just told me about Jimmy Two Shoes. I'm okay with this now. I wasn't okay with this when I started this work. I'm okay with that now. I cannot remember, I will not remember everything about every student that I deal with every day, but I do my best to track it either by putting a note in a special document I've created, or there's an email about what you're talking about, because that's how I tend to track my work. Yeah, I've just like my hands are up. I'm like, no, man, if I'm going to jail for that, send me now because I can't do it. I cannot physically do it. I can't.
Mhm.
And it's pretty cool when somebody says to me, literally, they're like, Chris Clough just came in looking for you. He said this, this, and this. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And students, students who come into room 208, I'll be like, you were here the other day. I remember we talked about that. I'm like, but I'm sorry, I do not recall your name. Can you please tell me your name so I can check you off on the list? They're like, yeah, so and so. I'm like, yes, so and so. Thank you so much. And they're like, you couldn't remember my name, but you remembered the conversation we had about the weather or whatever. I'm like, well, that's just how this thing works. But it's hilarious. Somebody will say, "Hey, Roland, have you talked to da 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 da?" I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And they're like, "I emailed you the other day." And I'm like, "Perfect. I will find a device to access my email and look up that name, and then I can fill you in on what I did after we talked and whether I have closed that loop or why it's not closed." It's so I want to share this one thing that all of a sudden I think is funny. We have caseload meetings every week. The student success teacher, so we all have an alpha. The spec ed monitors have an alpha. The student success teachers have an alpha. The vice principals have an alpha. And these alphas, if you saw this chart, you'd die. I laugh every time I look at it because I belong to like four different sections, and it's the alphas all broke. It's hilarious to look at. And I'm like, oh, I belong to this one, and then I belong to this one. So they have meetings, And in their meetings, they have this beautiful spreadsheet where they talk about kids of concern. And those kids can come from the guidance counselor, they can come from the student success teacher, they can come from me, they can come from administration. And then I don't care about any of that. The only thing I care about is the to-do list. There's an IEP monitor to-do list. So after those caseload meetings, I click on that tab and I see what's there, and I look for my name. I don't care. I don't care what the VP is going to do with Jimmy. What if I'm supposed to do something with Jimmy? I'm going to find my name and I'm going to see what I have to do with Jimmy or what information I have to get. And what happens is after I do what I do, there's a comment section. I put the date, I say what I did, I say the conversation we have, and then I mark it green. I color the whole box green. So when people look at it, they're like, oh, Roland did what he was supposed to because it's green. Or it's red because I can't get a hold of the student or there's some kind of issue. I've been chasing this one student for 2 weeks. So it's broken my heart that for 2 caseload meetings, I did not complete what was assigned to me.
Mhm.
So I've written a novel in the comment section. It's hilarious. John, the SST that I work with, he loves it because he can sit in the caseload meeting and he says to me now, he can visualize me saying what's written there. That's how well he kind of knows me now. He's like, oh, Roland left us a novel because he wants us to know exactly what happened. He loves that. But the box is like this big. Everybody's moved on, and I'm still filling in like October 17, called period 3. So and so was not in class, but I saw him in the hallway at lunch. Like, it's hilarious. So the other day I finally found this kid. And I said to this kid, man, where have you been? Like well, I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere. And I'm like, yes, you truly are. I said, this is the happiest day of my life. I've been trying to talk to you for 2 weeks. And he's just staring at me and I'm like, you're not in trouble from me. I just want to have a conversation about your attendance for period 2. He's like, oh, French class. I'm like, yeah. So we get into this conversation and I'm typing it all out. And then at the end, he looks at me, he goes, why are you so happy? I'm like, because I just painted my name green. And he had no idea what I was talking about. But I literally, the box was this big. And like, I went in and I input the green. It is done. I spoke to the student. What happens next? Who knows? His name's going to pop up on Tuesday and I'm going to be assigned to him again. And that's okay because
Mhm.
I finally did what I said I was going to do. All that to say, like, I can't remember everything. So when I go to the caseload spreadsheet, because John wants to look at it with me Tuesday before he goes to caseload, I open it up. I'm like, there it is, John. If you have questions, ask me. I probably won't remember, but everything I did with that kid is in that box. I got answers for you. Or there's more problems, whatever, but it's all there. I can't remember. There's too many people. I can't remember. That's kind of what I miss about having my own primary class of 26, 27 kids is that you're with them every day. You know everything about them. Everything. The smells they hate, their favorite food, what can make them smile instantly, what can break their heart instantly. You know that. Rochelle's smiling right now because she knows what I'm talking about. And so do you, because you don't have huge classes, so you get to
Yeah.
really know them.
Yeah, and part of that is there's a I'm always that's a placing that in your professional practice. I think you have to be very um what's the word? Mindful, intentional, but also recognizing the delicacy of it. And when you're in communication with teachers, not to flex on that and somehow suggest that like I think a good way to honor that richness of relationship is to be clear with the parents, to be clear with the kids, to sort of keep it in the background. um I've been in meetings where that relationship is used, it's weaponized. So someone knows something about a kid that very, obviously, as I hear it, I'm like, yeah, that should have been brought into the meeting, but it's used as a leverage point. Like, well, you don't know the kid as well as I do. I've had this experience with the kid. FYI, that's part of the reason that they're sort of acting the way that they're doing, or they're learning the way that they're doing. I don't To use what you understand about the kids as a defense or as an excuse for why someone has poor practice, I think we have to watch for those moments, because I have had, I've been in meetings, student success meetings, where someone has very clearly said, they have a close relationship with the family, or they know something about this. And it's just kind of um, like a truth bomb in the middle of a conversation. And it's, it's a distraction. I think if you're doing a good job of building relationships with the kids, and you find your language to be able to speak to it, then you never have to feel compelled to provide the exact protected information if it's going to betray the relationship. Well, yeah, well, that's, Jimmy. It's because Jimmy, you know, he doesn't like going to his dad's house on Friday. So any work that isn't like, that's to say that to say that out loud, sort of like in mixed company or student success, or even like a spec ed meeting, it's not useful. And I find sometimes I hear the words that are said, and I sort of look at the look on the adult's face, and I think, you like that you know this much information about this family. But I think if that's the case, then you should also know that you have to maintain their dignity in this information that you know about this family. And then I go, I don't know if that was a dignified way to share that information, because now you got people spinning. It should have been a smaller group, maybe a one-to-one, like a sidebar kind of a thing. Um, so yeah, I do appreciate it. I do respect it. I'm also very mindful that if it's been shared with me, you have to treat it with the respect that maybe the kid and the family aren't. I think we have to be the professionals that recognize that that privacy line, sometimes we have to put the bubble around it, because that information is shared so freely and so fast and so continuously, that someone just gets used to your counsel without ever realizing that they've gone one step too far. In my classroom, we call those moments doctor's moments. So doctor's information, because my kids will blurt quite quickly. And they also volunteer to tell stories. My whole classroom, my pedagogy is based on storytelling. It hands down storytelling. So the kids get used to this, and they get used to the richness of being able to talk about things from a story perspective, more than one sentence, so they can kind of ease into whatever they want to share. I've said to the kids, because I've tried to set them up with the prompt that allows them to maintain their own dignity, is that whenever they are going to share information that includes someone that's in the room in front of them or not in the room, that they say, may I tell a story connected with this, what you just said? And then I will say to them, is this a doctor's story? As in, is it the kind of things that's kind of only shared in private? And if to say, no, I don't think so, then I will ask the second, is there a person in this room that's a part of your story that you need their permission to share it? And if we make it through those three doors, then I'm like, carry on. But the kids also know that I'll say, stop. That point right there, we're not going to share in the group. We're not going to do that. And that method has come directly out of student success meetings, where maybe we need to have a couple of questions like that, where someone just goes, stop. Let's talk about this away from this meeting, and then we can bring it back in a different form. Because it really is quite precious. It is incredibly precious and scarce and fragile when we have information about families. And I'm constantly watching, like, are people respecting the actual richness of that? And I think the people that are doing a good job on it are rarely the individual in these student success meetings that are saying, well, I know the family, and people don't do that actually have, I think, the really great relationships. They know how to weave in the information. They are accustomed to the burden of the responsibility of knowing families and kids at that level, colleagues as well, whatever that is, right? Knowing humans at that level. And they tend to be able to weave it in a professional way with just the right measure that we can keep the conversation moving forward without breaching privacy. So I think so critical.
That's a great point. I agree. Totally critical. I just want to throw this up there. Rochelle said that she tells her students that she won't remember something from the day before, so they need to remind her. My favorite line is, "I don't even remember what I had for breakfast." So
Mhm.
what you're asking me about, Gandhi, this doesn't exist.
I will say to my students, "Thank you for being my human Post-it note." And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "That was gone. You walked in, bright yellow color, and reminded me exactly of the thing that I'm about to do, I swear, or that thing that I need to remember." So people as and we actually so again from a spec ed perspective, we talk about the different types of reminders and notification system for those reminders that we all need. And I have spoken to like the actual reminder could be an actual post-it note, it could be a human post-it note. And then the notification method is just seeing them sometimes, but maybe when that person comes to you, they also have to say, remember, you need to do a thing. So I like it. Human post-its. And we all have that happen, right? You walk out of your class and you see that teacher that you knew you totally forgot that you need to meet. It's like the universe is like, tap, 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 tap. Remember, you were supposed to talk to Chids about this thing. Like, oh, yeah, I was. What was I supposed to talk to him about? The universe won't give you that, but it will give you the person in front of you, reminding you that's the person you need to talk to.
Hmm. I'm even working on the subject lines of my email so that
Oh,
when I go searching for something, it
yes.
pops up right away.
Good,
So,
good.
yeah, I've had a couple people say to me, "Wow, the detail that you put into your subject line is crazy." And I'm like, "This thing doesn't work." So
Hmm.
I need the computer to work for me. Even
Yes,
I put the date, they're like, "Well, the date's already attached to the email." I'm like, "But it's in the subject line." So if somebody says last Tuesday and I just put in student initials and then start putting in the date, boom, it pops up and I'm like, "There it is. Okay, let's chat." I just
good.
looking I'm looking for those daily details that at the time that you're doing them, they're taxing you, but they pay huge dividends later when you have no clue what somebody's referring to. And I just really, that seems to be my theme the last month and a half is that I've just released myself of that weight on my shoulders. I cannot remember it all. There's just too much happening too fast. And like I told you, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop at 3 o'clock or 3:30. I have emails in my inbox that I'll probably review today when I'm sitting in front of the TV watching football because tomorrow it'll just be the volume will be too much and I don't like that. I feel like I'm behind. I don't want to feel behind. I want to feel like I'm just there. I'm there. And let's let Monday do its thing. Let's not let Friday, Saturday, and Sunday encroach on the Monday if I can. Like, I'm not killing myself over here to make that happen, but it's on my radar that if I'm watching football, I can start to deal with these things and write in my book and make sure that I'm okay. I just need to be okay. If I'm not okay, then nobody's going to be okay.
Hmm.
So I want to be okay. Gary says, "Thank you, Chris, for those comments about protecting students' privacy and dignity. It is very important. It's very important. I would like to say it's just also important. Don't forget that someone like me has to work with the student. So if there's information, if there's information I should know, then please tell me that you're sharing some sensitive information that needs to stay with us, but that I need it so that I can do my job. Because far too often, I'm finding people speak of this privacy, but then it impedes proper work with the student because there's critical information that I get after the fact that I think, well, if I knew that before, I would have operated differently and in a way that would have been more efficient for the situation, more effective for the student. So I think there's another difficult conversation. People don't tell you things and they lean on, well, it's private. I'm not going to share that with you. Well, can we be upfront about that? I would prefer you say to me, so and so's coming back from a suspension. I'm sorry, there's a lot of details that I cannot share because of privacy. So please be a little bit more compassionate in your perspective with this student the next few days.
Mhm.
Okay. Like, great. I can do that. And you've given me something to help me be effective with the kid. Don't let it blow up. And then I'm like, what happened there? Well, there's some stuff that I can't tell you, but what the hell? I'm not posting it on Facebook. I'm their teacher. So again, you and Gary protect student privacy and dignity. I think part of protecting their privacy and their dignity is sometimes getting a little bit more information that will help direct me. That's all. I don't need to know it all. I just give me something. This came up in a meeting the other day where somebody said two kids were suspended and nobody told them that they were suspended. Nobody told them they were coming back from suspension, and they end up in the same class together. But the teacher doesn't know that they probably shouldn't be together right now, but they're together in a room where they shouldn't be because of what happened 3 days earlier. And it's like, how does that happen? Well, we're protecting student privacy. Oh, okay, you're protecting student privacy, and if something breaks out in the classroom and one kid kicks the other kid's ass, and then everybody's like, what the hell happened there? It's going to end up in your lap for protecting privacy. Like, let's think a little bit here. It doesn't make sense for them to both return from a situation they had with each other and end up in the same room without the teacher knowing to be aware, to mitigate, to maybe one of them could have been in room 208 for that period for the day just to kind of get back into things while the other one's in the room. Who knows? I don't know. But I tell you, when you hear those things and you're like, oh my God, there is dynamite sitting right in front of me. Nobody
Dynamite match.
there.
Yeah. I
At
used
least
to run.
tell me there's explosives in the room. So I'm
Yeah.
okay. I'll put my lighter away. I won't bring that out today.
I first experienced that back when I was so you have to imagine, so just strap in for another layer of complexity here. So when I was doing the access program, suspension and expulsion, and I would have students coming, so it was our North region program. So we had one North, East, Central, and West. So I was the North, and an
King of the
event,
North. King of the
King of
North.
the North, yeah, an event could happen, and students from different schools could show up, or multiple events could happen over a semester from the same school, and students could show up. But in both cases, the kids are connected in some way. So when you have a two-room schoolhouse where students with um, antagonistic relationships are expected to sit in the same room, and their their social structure of their regular school is stripped away. So all the cueing and behavior systems, even if they're not following them well in their home school, the kid is trained to sort of at least notice them and think about them. Right? It's you walk into your own school, you sort of know the people you're going to see, there's the principal going to be there. All of these are social cues that remind you of a behavioral norm. So let's take that away and put them in a place that they've never been in before, with adults that they have no social credit with. The adults don't have any social credit either, but the kid knows that they've been pulled from their previous school for doing something that was illegal at the previous school. And let's put them in the same room with two adults that are trained, highly trained, but really you never really have initially the tools to mitigate social behaviors. We don't, not as best as we have. Our tools are better for the curriculum based ones. But if kids are coming in with a beef prior to being in there with you, you can't unwind that. It's, especially if you're saying both of them are showing up on Tuesday. Well, the logistics of even getting the two kids into the room, like you don't want them arriving at the door at the same time. You don't want to have any wait time. You want to make sure that you can sort of put them into, maybe the separate spaces initially, like you would if you got a brand, you have a cat, you're getting a brand new cat. It's very much like that, right? Like, how do you acclimatize them to each other after the fact that they've both been accused of basically kind of school crimes? So I got into this and I started to use the word alchemy. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, it's alchemy here, where these two individual stories, what could happen by that story overlapping in a site that we don't have the same social kind of learning and social structures? I said, we can't even really plan for best case outcome because we don't know, because those the expectations that we would have don't apply. The physics are off. So whatever happens, it's not like we can say the antecedent is their fight that they had. Like, let's even say two kids in the same school, they have a fight, they beat the hell out of each other, and then they both get suspended. Because of the nature of it, they both get 5 days plus. So they get sent to a suspension expulsion. So they both show up on the same day. And you're like, okay, if we are the restorative practice to help, reconnect them with the school, but they haven't had any opportunity to do it outside of this. So we're the landing point. Let's go, boys. Let's get this kind of rolling. And so I started pushing back on that to the administrators and saying, we need to have some sort of a method here to understand that deregulating whatever emotionally charged thing that brought them here in the first place. So we need this middle ground, this purgatory-like space where we can kind of say, okay, before we get into this new space, you've been bounced from the first space. We're in the second space. Before we get to the third space, which is when we can restore, fix, triage, build, grow, learn, any of the generative sort of terms that we hope to do, we have to have sort of like a common understanding of the rules of engagement. So going back to, sitting there at a student success, and this is an extreme example, me talking about not extreme, sorry, I shouldn't say that. It's a common example from my experience working in suspension and expulsion. Everything I learned there now has become like, this is another part of school that only a handful of students and a handful of educators will ever have an association with, or a point of reference to, right? It's part of my own GPT in my head. So back at a student success classroom, where we're starting to sort of work through some of these mitigating factors, it's the need to know. The need to know always needs to be pushed back on a little bit. We have to have kind of a fulsome kind of picture, so it's not just titillating and kind of driven by our compulsion as social media users, Facebook users, oversharers, TMI investors, because that's what's fueling our need to know sometimes. The two kids in that classroom that were suspended and sitting in that classroom, sure, but I would need more. I would actually need more information to know whether or not the teacher in the classroom needs to know that. For me, it's not as simple as saying, because because this thing happened, these people need to know. I need more information, typically.
I get that, but then in my opinion, it's on you if something happens in that room that could have been avoided if the teacher knew. That's on you. And I would tell you that day in and day out. That's all I'm saying. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I like the pushback. But
As long
someone's going to
as,
land on somebody
yep,
if it hits the fan. That's it. And it's not going to be me.
as long as we can also do the counter side to that, is that the learning and social loss, if we decided to do something different, then would also be on people's shoulders as well, including the classroom teacher. If the classroom teacher said absolutely, so see how this is kind of like a bigger, broader conversation, which is why we need more information, because if the teacher actually has a say, as in we can't have a discussion that says, from the educator's perspective, I am uncomfortable with these two kids in the classroom, end of sentence. We can't be in that state, because that's anxiety inducing. It's not data driven. There isn't the evidence. We don't actually have anything other than, oh, we're being kind of precious. So I'm just suggesting we need a better conversation space, that second space, to have a better conversation around, if the classroom teacher is not told, it is because of, and then we have full accountability for whoever makes that decision. Because the counterspin, if the teacher says, I'm not going to teach this class, or I can't be in this class with these two students, or I'm going to center out this other student, that level of dismissiveness also has to go into the exact same thing. And that teacher then has to be held accountable for whatever negative or deleterious outcomes happen for those children who may in fact be on the route to restorative connection. But the teacher still says, but they fought, I can't have them in here. So it's in the same kind of salad of problems. Um, yeah, I eat from that side buffet all the time. I'm just sitting there. Yeah, you want those green peppers? I'll eat your green peppers, right?
Rochelle says that she, in grade 11, she experienced a situation where two students in the same class had been
Mm-hmm,
in an altercation a few days before and then came back to class and a fight broke out.
mm-hmm,
I feel bad that you had to experience that, Rochelle. Um,
absolutely.
Gary's got a few things here. Gary said that you need to consider how information is shared and how it helps and be careful about labeling. Yes. Because the information doesn't, you beware that the information doesn't become gossip or stigmatizing.
And to that end, also be aware of the people that are at the table that are already gossipers and stigmatizers. I'm not going to call you out, Chids, if I know that you're loose with your information. I'm just not going to share it with you. I'm actually going to protect you from your own bad decisions. But that's on me, I would say, as a cert, as a individual that's connected within the school, as someone who pays attention to the point that I'm just fatigued driving home. But also, it's. I think the problem here with that language, Gary, is that it's not gossip. Stoicism would teach us this. It isn't a thing until we judge it to be. So it's actually not gossip until a gossiper turns it into gossip. Because it could even be shared as gossip and it lands with me. And I'm like, I know exactly how to compartmentalize this. I know exactly how to categorize this. I think we have to make it an active state and say that we are mindful of the gossipers and the stigmatizers around us so that we can sort of help them change their behaviors as well. Because we're always going to be in a position of more. Let me rephrase that. What I've come to learn is I'm always in the position of more, knowing more, having too much. Why? I'd say to my kids, why did you have to tell me that? You just gave me so much paperwork to do. And they're like, I'm like, oh, thanks. Thanks, Jimmy.
Friggin' Jimmy.
Jimmy.
This happened to me this week. One of the students on my caseload who I'm getting to know because they spend a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time checking in with me. Second period, didn't go to second period class, came to find me instead. So the first thing I say to the student is, did you go to second period class for attendance? They're like, no, I did not go at all. This is what's happening to me right now. This is what's happening. And I'm like, okay, let me ask a few questions because if you're just messing around, you're going to second period. Like, so I need to quickly kind of figure out, are you messing around or is there a real problem here? Is that even up to me? I don't know. But they sought me out. So I'm like, if you took the time to find me, I'm going to listen to you. I figure out, okay, this student, based on what I know about this student and kind of the things I've learned from the beginning of September to now, this student's having a difficult time and it's happening right now. It happens to be second period. So I say to the student, what, okay, I can get you into room 208 and but you're going to have to work. Like if you're telling me you're just going to sit in there for a period, you're not going to do any work, then this isn't happening. Like we're at school. We're at school. So there are certain things that have to happen, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, no, I've got all this stuff to do. I'm like, awesome. Let me call your second period teacher. I didn't need to tell, and I wasn't going to tell the second period teacher everything I knew because privacy, labeling, stigmatization. I'm not saying that that teacher would have done that. I'm just saying that I didn't believe that the teacher needed to know any of that. The teacher just needed to know, hey, I have so and so with me. Can you please mark them present because they are here. Now, if the teacher said, no, I'm not doing that. They're not in my class. I'm not marking them present. I'll take care of it then. I'll call attendance and I'll talk to attendance. I'm just asking. The teacher's like, no problem. I can do that. I said, the students in 208, I'm going to sign them in. I'm going to kind of supervise them this period type of thing. Like they're not just doing whatever they want. And if they don't do what it is that they agreed to do with me, then they're going to class or they're going to the office. Like, it's these are your choices. The teacher was great. Teacher's like, no problem. If you could get them to do this, this, and this from my course, that'd be even better. So I'm like, okay. Teacher marks them present or deals with attendance, so that's not an issue. I sign them into 208 and I tell them, this is what's expected. Is this something you can do or is it not? And they're like, no, I can do that. I'm like, okay. They're like, I might not get it done, but I will work on it as I'm dealing with the other things I'm dealing with. Great. I talked to the teachers in 208 that period, and I'm like, listen, this is a situation. I signed the student in. I'm not supposed to be in here, but I will. I got stuff to do, but I will check in a couple of times over this period to make sure they're on track. Like, if they cause you any problems, just call me, because I'm not building problems for other people. And I'm not just taking something and not dealing with it. That's not how I usually flow. So, like, it's under control, Roland. Go do what you need to do. I'm like, if there's a problem, I'm just down the hall. Anyway, I go do my thing, check on the kid a couple of times, and then by the end of the day, the kid had gone to the rest of their classes and was functioning. This is a great reminder to me that I didn't need to sit on the phone for 15 minutes and give this kid's life story and circumstance to the classroom teacher. It wasn't required. All the classroom teacher needed to know was the student is present. There are some issues right now. That's why they're not in your room. They're with me. I'm taking accountability for them. I'm going to make sure everything's properly taken care of for this student to function academically as much as they can at the moment. Are you good with that? Because I even told the kid, if your teacher pushes back and barks, that's it, it's over, because they're the classroom teacher. You're supposed to be in there. I know there's extenuating circumstances. I'm not going to share those with the teacher. That's up to you to share if you feel you want to. I'm just going to lean on my relationship with that teacher. And the teacher was like, that's not a problem. Thanks for letting me know. I'm glad that they're not going to be marked absent and that's not going to cause them more difficulty or whatever. But as I'm pushing back on this idea, I actually employed it, right? Like, I did not tell, and if the teacher would have said, what's the problem? I still wouldn't have given them the details. I would have just said, there's a mental health concern right now. That's all I'm going to say. Can you help? Great. If not, I understand. I'll move in a different direction. So I get it. And sometimes I get that too. A kid walks in, I say, hey, how are you? Can you tell me your name? I look, I don't see them on the list. And then one of the other teachers runs over to me, says, can I talk to you for a second? I'm like, sure. And then they're like, this is so and so. This is the situation they're in. I just get broad strokes. I don't get details. So, like, they're going to be in here and they're going to be working on da 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 da. If you could check in here and there, that'd be great. But that's all you need to know. I'm like, beautiful. Thank you for having the conversation with me, because now I can operate in a way that I know something's up and they're in here. They will work, but I'm not going to push their buttons. That's
Mm.
all I need to know. Now, if they do start pushing, then there's some buffer space, and then there's me reaching out to the people saying, hey, this person's pushing pretty hard. Like, do you want to talk to them? Is this normal? Like, give me some more information. If you tell me, no, let them push your buttons, just don't react. Okay, that's
It's a
good.
strategy. It's a good strategy.
Well, at
Yeah.
least I know, because then that person's not high flying on my radar. Like, I need to
Yep.
deal with them. No, this is what they're going to do. I know. And
That's good second space information.
it
That's what
is.
I'm saying. It's that buffer in betweener. The by the way, you're going to see, you may experience, you probably will notice, you could feel all these things that are like the reactive stuff. And the
I
reactive stuff, if sharpened the right way, means that we can move from an over emotional state to a data tracking state, which is where we need to get to, right?
100%. And I got to say, the team I'm working with has been fantastic this way. I get so many tidbits because kids walk in, they're looking for a particular person.
Yep.
This happened this week. A kid walked in and he said, I'm here to see Miss So and so. And I said, I'm sorry, she's not in the room. The kid said, Miss So and so told me to come see her. I'm like, oh, that's cool, dude. Like, I totally get it. If you like, um, tell me your name. He told me his name. I wrote it down because I knew it was going to be gone as soon as he left. I said, as soon as Miss So and so comes back in the room, I will let her know that you came as you were instructed to. Until then, are you good to go back to class? He said, yes. So he left. Literally 30 minutes later, Miss So and so comes in. I'm like, oh, hold on. This kid came in. This is his name. She goes, where is he? I said, I sent him back to class. And the look on her face said it all. She's like, oh, Roland, you shouldn't have done that. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Nobody told me that this kid was coming. Kids come in here all day long asking for you, and half the time it's a smoke screen. Like, I don't know. So then I could see she lightened up and she's like, okay. I said, what do you want me to do from now on? She goes, when a kid comes in and says, I told them to come see me, hold on to them. No matter where I am or what I'm doing, hold on to them. Dude, I'm just telling you, okay?
I know. This
Hold
is
on to
so.
them. I know it's so messed.
Well,
Call their
yes, no, yes, no. But I'll go.
Hold on to them. Call their teacher, tell them they're in 208 and they're waiting to see me. I'm like, no problem. She goes, okay, I'm going to call his class, and my fingers are crossed that he went to class as you instructed him. So then 2 minutes later, she comes back. She's like, he went to class. so, so because they were worried he wouldn't go to class and they wouldn't be able to
Of
find him.
course.
Anyway, so
Of,
I learned something with this person. Now, this person, the problem's going to be that when she walks in the room, there's going to be 100 kids waiting for her that I held on to. And then she's going to have to tell me, she's going to have to soften her approach, because I watched a video last night that I think I think I saved it because I wanted to share it with you. Jocko says the best way to be able to do what you need to do is to follow the rules to the nth degree. So people tell you to stop following the rules because you follow them so well that it brings difficulties onto other people. That's the gist of it. And that's what I'm going to do. If that room's going to be full of kids that said she wanted to see me, I'm going to say, sit down, let me get you a cappuccino. I will call your teacher and tell them you're in here waiting to see so and so. And then when so and so comes in, I'll say to so and so, these people said that you asked to see them. They are here. I held them as you wish.
mhm.
And I'm not, as I tell you this, I'm not looking for trouble. I'm looking to be the best person I can be, the best worker I can be. If those are my instructions and I can remember them, then I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it until you tell me to stop.
Mhm.
And
I like it.
thank God that the kid was in class. And when the kid came to see her, I made sure to stop him and to say, hey, thank you so much. Hey, I remembered, like, I joke with these kids because they're high flyers, they're in and out. I remembered your name, dude. And he was all happy. And I'm like, and you went to class. Like, these are the small wins. But now I've got those instructions. The room's going to be full of people when she walks in because she's a busy person and she's in and out with her job. But if that's what you want me to do, then I'm going to do it.
I will, in a moment like that, when someone gives me a directive, I'll ask for more information, and then I'll decide whether or not I follow their rule.
And
Because if in my
that might be me in
yeah,
January. But right
because
now
it
in
yeah,
October,
yeah.
I'm just
Because
saying.
in my mind, I am deciding whether or not that's a you problem, as in you're overbooked. You need to change how you're rolling. I think about, do I want this to become a me problem? As in, I present to the kids, hang out, wait, you're welcome to wait. And then that could be the antecedent to an issue that now I have with them, because the kids coming in looking to feel a certain way, to meet up with Miss or Mr. whatever, right? Uh, and they don't get it. And then if the follow up is, just wait and they'll be back, of course, presented as pleasantly as possible. And you end up in this space of, but they told me they would be here. And again, these are all possible outcomes, could be positive, could be neutral, could be negative. I think to myself, I don't think I'm going to agree to follow your rule, but tell me some more information so I know whether or not sending the kid away is an inconvenience for you, or it actually puts the kid in jeopardy in some way. That's generally how my brain will kind of make me decide how close to somebody else's rule I'm going to follow. And I'm prepared for the next time around to say, Jimmy was here. he went back to class. Because I've been in this. I'm like, oh, why didn't you hang on to him? At that point, I have said to people, because I needed the chair, I needed the space, I couldn't support Jimmy. I didn't agree with your rule at that point. I see it as a rule, but it did not work in that moment. He said he'll be back in the class. Like I will never, when it comes to some of the social rules like that, like someone asking me for a favor, I'll ask for more information and I'll decide in my head whether or not it's going to stay loose or tight. Most times it stays loose. Do I say that to the individual? No, because I always have the power of discrimination. I don't have to say to the person right then, nope, I'm not going to hold Jimmy. I get to decide that depending on the information presented to me. So I won't ever say that. But I have sent Jimmy back after someone has told me, hold Jimmy here.
I
Alchemy, baby. Alchemy. Jimmy shows up, and two of the kids that are in there, Jimmy already knows. Jimmy just wants to sort of come in for social gain and distraction. I'm not going to keep Jimmy.
if I'm glad that you raised this point, because
Yeah.
if it becomes a
I just
burden,
wanted to make it concrete, right? Like
I like that.
what would be the conditions under which I would break somebody else's rule? So,
If it becomes overwhelming for me at the time trying to run that room,
mhm.
then yeah, he's leaving. Like, until then, I'm going to follow the rule. But I love what you said, because I'm not going to just eat the shit all day from these kids that may be dysregulated or whatever. If Jimmy comes in and says they said that they wanted to see me this period and now I've been instructed to hold on to them, I will. But if Jimmy's causing problems, then most likely Jimmy's going to leave. At this point in my experience here, he's not staying if he's going to do that. And I will tell him, hey, you're causing me a problem. This is not cool. And if he continues, then he'll probably leave. And I'm okay with dealing with that. But again, it works best if somebody tells me, and I know they can't tell me everything, but if they say, hey, period 2, when you're in here, this guy named Jimmy is probably going to come in looking for me. There's a lot of things going on. Keep him. Okay. Then if he's acting like a turkey or a turd, then I'm like, okay, I got to function in a way that helps him because there's something bigger going on that I don't know. But if nothing's said, and all day long, there's Gary. I think Gary would agree. There's side deals with a lot of these kids, and when I call it a side deal, it's they've built a rapport. The staff member has built a rapport relationship with this kid. I'm not privy to it, but because these staff members, they're like the lifeblood for some of these kids. There's a lot of rapport. There's a lot of like understandings that I don't have. So I guess my default is when a kid comes in and says, I'm looking for Miss So and so, not that she sent me, I'm looking for her, and I can see the look on their faces, something's up. I'm like, they're not in here right now. Is there something I can help with until you can find them? Sometimes they say, yeah, this is what's happening. I'm having like a panic attack. And I'm like, okay, no problem. What what do you normally do? What can I do to help, not even knowing you? Other times they're like, I'll just come back later. I'm like, okay. And if they say, can you tell them? Then I grab my book and I write the name down, because I'm like, I'm not going to remember in 2 minutes when the phone rings 100 times telling me they're sending somebody for this, that, or whatever. I'm not going to remember. And I'm trying to build relationship too with a lot. I think I told you there's a student in doing credit recovery period 1. I've just gotten to know this kid by talking to her in the hallway before class, asking about her breakfast, how her evening was, just small talk. Now she comes in after period 1. She checks in with me before I leave. She's like, Mr. C, how are you doing today? I don't even know her name, but she waves and she smiles and she asks me for help with her online course, and I help. I'm building something with this person. I have no idea who they are. I don't know their name. But I see the way that the teachers talk to this individual. This individual
Mhm.
is respectful to the teachers. There's probably 100 million struggles that I don't know about, which is fine. But now the kid's got one more trusted adult, I guess, and I don't even know her name. I do what I can.
Trustable.
Trustable adult.
Yeah, trustable.
She had a rotten bagel the other day from Timmy's. I'm like, how does that even happen? It was funny. I'm like, are you
Actually
sure?
like moldy
She
or?
goes, well, it tasted really bad. I'm
Mm.
like, okay. I'm like, those things are expensive. I would have gone back and said, this doesn't taste good. She said,
Oh,
well, Anyway, dude, we've gone an hour and
can I
30
share some
minutes.
sadness? Can I
Oh
share some
no.
sadness?
You can, yes.
My God, man. So, I've told you my fondness for going for bagels.
Oh no.
Here we
You
go. See, I
yes, you
knew what I was
have.
doing. Okay. And it's kind of the thing. I'll just kind of pop it on the family. I'm like, hey, I'm going to grab bagels. Like that's the equivalent is like going to grab McDonald's, right? I'll just like spring them on. I'm going to, and we there's we went to a place before that's a little bit further away from my house, and then another place opened up closer to my house, and so I started going there, dude. The last time I was there, okay, so I got my lox and cream cheese bagels for Karen and I, and the kids just get a couple plain bagels. They toast them up at home, right? And I'm sort of like I'm walking towards the door, and you do that sort of like I had kind of like my phone and my coffee and my bag of bagels. So you turn and you use your back to open the door. And at that point, I can see because the style of bagel place, and when you're looking in on it, on the left hand side is the whole counter there where you put your order in, and on the right side's like all their stuff, and you can see right into the back of the bakery, so you can see the staff all working on stuff, right? And as I look back, I see the owner, and I know they're the owner because I've seen them a few times. And they see the owner or the head manager. They talk to people. They're telling people to do shit, right? They're watching. I can see the manager sort of like I'm the manager sort of vibe from or owner, right? I'll assume owner. Something catches my attention as they're sort of walking to the back and they're about to turn behind a kind of a large piece of machinery that sits about maybe 7 feet high, so just above the height of someone and wide enough to obscure someone. So as I turn, I look, I'm like, yeah, you just kind of like your brain is idly kind of taking in information as I'm actually thinking about going out the door. And as I back out, I see the owner walk towards sort of down this sort of like walkway to make, as I'm looking at it, to make a right hand turn to walk towards staff. I see their hand go down to their pocket, their hand come up to their mouth, and as they turn behind the piece of machinery, I see a plume of vape smoke go up in the air. And as they just come past the machinery, I see the telltale sign of the hand going back into the pocket. So dude's vaping in the back kitchen. I can't go back there. I can't go back there. And I'm sad. I'm sad. And then walks up to the staff that are sort of preparing some bagels and actually touch the product. Like he sort of arranged a couple things on the trays. I'm like, I can't go back. I sent an email. I haven't got a response.
Dude, I am sorry to hear that.
They're good bagels, man.
I'm sorry to hear that. They're good bagels, but you're not
You,
interested in,
and
in the vaping.
no,
I get it.
and that moment of your brain, something in your brain is just noticing a bit of information. It just catches your attention, and that going to the pocket gesture, going to the pocket, the little side pocket. We're watching for that in schools. Like I'm trained to watch for the kid to kind of do the lean, and they just kind of they palm it, and they put it back in there, and then they walk and they wait.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sad.
Sorry, bro.
I had to tell my family. I had to break the news to them too. I said I
And
have to go. I have to go back to the original place. And Karen's like, the bagels there were so good. Like I know.
well, you know that there's a place that I won't frequent anymore because of a situation with my family. And I think I've updated you. My family, the whole family has said, we're okay to eat there again. And I'm like, well, I'm not going, I'm not spending my money there.
I can't forgive. I
Like
can't
it's
forgive.
funny because even my son, who was the ultimate, he paid the price. He's like, Dad, I actually like their food. And I'm like, well, I will not be picking it up, and I will not be swiping my debit card in that store. So if
Yeah.
you guys want that food, you're gonna have to find a way to get it. I'm not doing it. I refuse. I friggin' refuse.
So backstory for, I don't know if Rochelle and Gary are still listening. Before I was an educator, before I became an educator, I ran restaurants. I was a exec chef for a no a renowned, I don't know if it's as renowned, but like a notable barbecue chicken and ribs place in downtown Toronto. And the work I had to do to keep my staff working clean, working healthy, working safely, it's a lot of work. And there are no shortcuts. It's constant grind. So to see a restaurateur do that, it just, health inspectors say they look for one small dent in your armor, and they start watching to see if there's other systems that follow. And I can't believe for a second that this individual, if they would so flagrantly vape in their kitchen in front of open product and their staff, then there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. I don't even know if that's the actual Hamlet state, but you get it. There's other things going on.
Right, and you'd know because you know how the
I
sausage
didn't
is
want to
made.
watch anymore. I literally was like, I'm looking at the bag of bagels and I'm like, I'm going to eat it. I'm going to eat it. I said goodbye. I'm like, this is the last time I will ever see you. I savored it, but I'm like, I'm not going back.
That's good. No, I got you. I totally understand. There's nothing worse. There's nothing worse. You find a place
Mm-hmm.
to frequent where the food is delicious, the service is good, and then you see something that you cannot unsee.
On the list of uh, privileged activities that I can't do anymore, there's nothing worse. There's things that are worse than this. But on that list of like druthers, I really wish I could come back to you, but I can't. It's not me, it's you. So,
A couple of comments from Gary before we shut things down.
for sure.
Gary likes this conversation about discerning the appropriate level of sharing and transparency that respects the role of all.
We know with Google Docs, it's already there. Are you a viewer? Are you a commenter? Are you an editor?
Editor,
Right?
yeah.
But also, is there an expiry date
Mm.
on your access to that information? And I think, Google is doing it from a very technical perspective, but I do the exact same thing as I'm having professional conversations. Exact same.
And then Gary said that Montreal bagels from a bagel house closest I have had to true Montreal bagels. I was just going to say, I don't know of any good bagel places in KW. So obviously Gary does. Gary, you're going to have to let me know where you go, because sometimes when you tell me you're going out to grab some bagels, I feel that force strongly as a dad.
Mm,
Like I feel like I would like to do that for my family too. Where can I go here? And there used to be a place in Waterloo years ago, like a long time ago, but it's gone now. And it was one of those, like, it was just a shop in a strip mall with no signs or anything. If you knew it was there, you'd go and pick up your bagels on Saturday or Sunday morning. There was no sign. This guy was like, I walk in here Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings, and I make great bagels. And people who know come and get the bagels. I work for a few hours on the weekend. I'm good to go. One of those
mhm,
places, which you know that the guy's some kind of genius, no signs or anything, but sells out every Saturday and
mhm.
Sunday. You know something's good going on, right?
You got
Oh,
you got poppies on King Street.
yeah. I don't think it's a walk in and get a dozen bagels type place. I think it's more of the vibe I've gotten from what I've heard of it is you go in, you order your bagel sandwich, you leave. Now I guess I could go and order 12 bagels, but I don't want to do that. This is why Gary can't comment, because he's driving to friggin' Mississauga to get his bagels.
Mhm.
Thanks, Gary. Mississauga, Gary. Man, must be
I'm
nice.
more of the fan. I like Montreal like style bagels, that kind of dense, a little bit more chewy, sweeter. They're a sweeter bagel. I don't mind those. And I've had them in Montreal, and there's two big families and their stores are pretty close to one another. Actually, no, they're not. Are they? I forget how close. Because I remember we were walking about both neighborhoods. Yeah. One of them actually ships out their bagels, and I can buy a bag of them at Metro just up the street from me. So if you are jonesing for that, you sometimes a local grocer will carry Montreal style bagels. Of course, you're not getting them, walking right into the storefront, but you can get the bag.
Gary says that the
There
wife
we
grew up
go.
in Montreal, so she knows, man. You can't
Yeah.
mess around with that. She
Yep.
knows.
I think the New York style is the more kind of a little more puffier, bready kind of style. That's what this place. Both of the places that I get them from here are more the New York style, a little bit more of a bigger, breadier bagel.
Oh,
That's it. Yeah,
yes.
Saint Viateur and Fairmount. Those are the two competing places. Now, I got really sick. My family got sick from Saint Viateur, but we think it was maybe it wasn't the cream, it was something else that we got. Smoked salmon cream cheese, and it was a pre-pack. So I
Oh,
won't put it on Saint Viateur, but both of the places we went into and had their sandwiches. Yeah. They're both good. Yeah, the Saint Viateur are the ones that I can get at Metro just up the street from me. So worth having. They freeze well as long as you pull the little clippy thing off and just make sure it's completely tied off. They freeze well. They toast up great.
good to know.
So yeah, Mississauga. Gary, I bet you. So you're like going to a grocery store to get them though, right? There isn't a Viateur. Like what are the
No.
bagels that they're heading to Mississauga to get just to get
Well, he
like,
said they're Montreal bagels from a bagel house.
oh, I got
So,
closest to
right.
the style of Viator or Fairmount.
Right.
Right. Well, buddy, like I said, if you want the fresh ones, sure. But if you actually want Viator, they ship them out. So
So this bagel talk reminds me that I'm going to be heading to Detroit in a little bit,
sweet.
and I'm going to be hitting up the two Coney Island downtown Detroit. There's two Coney Island Coney dog places. You know what a Coney dog is?
I don't, but it is kind of remarkable. I was just thinking the other day I was craving a Chicago style.
Okay, so
Yeah, yeah.
the Coney is steamed bun,
Yep.
hot dog with
Yep.
onions
Yep.
and
Raw onion, right?
raw onion, chili,
Yep.
cheese, mustard, and in
Is cheese is it cheese or is it mustard? It's the shot of mustard cheese. Is cheese the
there is cheese on it too. I think it's either some American cheese or like the liquid cheese.
whizzy?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but
Okay.
there's downtown Detroit. There are two places. They're related, and they fight for the best coney. So
Hmm.
I've already checked them out, but I told the boys we have to try both, and they have to tell me which one they like better. It's American Coney is the one place, and the other place is called Lafayette Coney. And then I
Hmm.
discovered yesterday, thanks to you, or in honor of you, there's a donut place in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So when I go there for a football game, I'm going to hit the dairy and I'm going to check out their donuts because they look darn good on Facebook.
So a quick Googling. Detroit style coney is defined. You have to have a natural casing hot dog. Get this, topped with beef heart chili. That's the meat, heart, and yellow mustard and diced onions.
So they
In
don't mention cheese.
That's what I was asking because I hadn't actually heard of cheese on there. Then they said there's a Flint style coney dog features dry or loose beef on a hot dog with mustard and onion. No mention of cheese.
Okay, that's interesting. I did have one with cheese when I was there.
I'm
So
betting.
maybe that was a side, it was obviously a side thing if it's not, but it was good.
Yeah, there's
I don't
also the Michigan dog. Now I'm just like I'm rabbit holing this stuff now.
I don't want to have it with cheese the next time I go if that's not.
You know what? With all that kind of like vinegary, savory, meaty kind of thing going on, I don't think the cheese would be useful. I just don't. The cheese that I think might maybe useful on that is if you did like a crumbled feta, like something that had a little bit of salt to it, like that might be okay. But the creamy, whizzy kind of cheese, I don't know. But the Chicago hits on all the right notes for me. Just that the mustard, you got that like fluorescent green relish, chopped white onion, and then the sport peppers are the optional. Like that's actually how I do my dog often at home, just with mustard, relish, and onion. My fave.
That's awesome. I will
Yeah.
certainly keep you updated. I know when I tried Lafayette and American, I left feeling the vibes from American Coney. That's the one I liked better.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna do the taste test again, and
Good for you.
I'm gonna try out that dairy only, not for the dairy, for the donuts, and I'll get back to you on that.
Of course. Post it up, baby. Post it up.
Gary says it's called the Bagel House, trained in Montreal.
Okay, that's good.
I like that moniker. I think because Gary's kind of my informal mentor this year. I think next year, whatever job I'm doing, I'm gonna be like
Trained by Gary.
I'm like trained by Gary.
I like it.
I'm at Benny's, but I've been trained by Gary.
Oh, we got to get those onto the decoded T-shirts.
Trained by Gary? Is that gonna
Trained by
be the
Gary.
tagline?
I like
That's
that.
awesome. Because then people can be like, "Hey, what about Chidiac? Trained by Gary."
Trained
So
by
you
Gary.
know what kind of flavor he might come with.
I like
Gary
it.
might be an administrator by then. Can you
Maybe.
believe we're gonna see the shift of Gary from teacher to administrator at some point? I'm making assumptions, Gary. So please, because Gary's probably over there trying to type as he drives. No, no, no.
Voice to text. Voice to text. Voice to text.
I think we're part of that era. We're gonna see the movement of Gary.
I went bold on a colleague who had got the the. Have you ever considered? We know this conversation, right?
Hmm.
The administrator says to a teacher, "Have you ever considered, becoming administrator?" And they're like, "I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it." I said, "Well, you know what? Me looking at you as a human, you as an emotional individual, you as your EQ, your understanding of curriculum, the way you connect with kids, the way you connect with families, how creative you are, all these things that you're running in the school, your community connections, your understanding of system information. If you decide to take the courses right now, you will be a VP in the next 3 to 4 years." And they're like, "What?" I'm like, I know these things. I know these things. I've watched enough individuals kind of go through that, how they sort of work through the information. I said 3 to 4 years, you'll make it to the list. You will. And I don't just say that because also the system, I say it also because I know how well you're doing. Like I know what you're doing. I said the one trade-off though is that everything that gets you to that position, you leave at the door. And they're like, "What are you talking about?" Well, then you'll spend the next few years trying to figure out what it means to be in that position. So, yes, what you're doing right now opens up this opportunity, and that's how the keys work. However, when you walk through that door and you become that person, you have to then become a new person. And sometimes that also means everything that got you there, you have to leave behind. And that's just the process that I've seen. And some people, they're okay with that because they find new spaces to exist in the system. They become, the 2.0 version of themselves. Other people, they become a little bit bitter because they're no longer getting to do all the stuff that they really loved, just like the week before. So, but yeah, I did what you just said about Gary, and I'll assume you have a similar understanding of Gary if you'd be so bold to say that. I said something very similar to another staff member, and they were just agog. They're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." So I was also in short saying I agree with what that administrator sort of like. Have you ever considered? I agree with their sort of like asking you if you would be doing this. They're like, "Man," I'm like, "Yep, yep."
Since you and I have talked about that and kind of made it explicit, this idea that what gets you there, most like in my experience, what's gotten people there has not continued.
No, it does not.
It's not continued.
I've yet to meet. Not immediately. 4 or 5 years. The trippy part, though, is that at the 4 or 5 year mark, you come to another fork in the road. Do I become a principal?
Hmm.
And definitely by that point, you will have. But I'm guessing by that point, you really enjoy if someone comes up to you and says, "Oh, cool, you're a principal." Yeah. And then you find yourself in another conversation where they're like, "Yo, Chids, well, what's your teachable? Or what was your teachable?" And you kind of go, "Oh, that kind of stings. That's right. I did have a teachable." When that anchors you all the way back to those things that you did you appreciate as much as your starting point, all that sort of like fertile ground that started your journey through education? What is my teachable? I love those combos. It's a little bit of time traveling, eh?
A little bit of time travel. Okay, well, we busted out a long one today. We're
We
gonna
did.
hit an hour and 50 minutes in a second, so
I like it.
it's good stuff. Thanks for your
Yep.
time today, and Gary and Rochelle, thanks for jumping in, commenting, and anybody else who joined us. We appreciate it. This
Can I
episode,
say, hey, wait, just before you do the call sign off, Gary, if you want to connect with Shids, I don't know if he said, we'll add you into the chat. Anybody else that wants to be a part of the WhatsApp chat, which is our free Patreon, non-Patreon, a Patreon, patronaut, a patronaut. Join
that's a
in.
T-shirt. That's a T-shirt. Patronaut.
Yep. Yep. I know it is not, you don't have to be there all the time. You don't have to keep feeding it. We're not driving to make sure, people are dropping in all the time. But, I managed to find a couple times this week to drop in. And even yesterday before the race, I dropped something in there, just a thought I really liked. One of the topic that popped up this week that caught my fascination, I'm still not to the end of it, is this idea of incentivizing our system, and what does it look like to incentivize educators? What does it look like to incentivize students? And my defining difference between the two is where we're not already being compensated in some way, where there isn't a clear compensation model. How do we then incentivize the things that we do on top of what is sort of like our job expectations or students' learning expectations? I think it's a really fascinating topic to talk about. This past week, I did it with granola bars. So,
I haven't heard the message yet, so I'm looking forward to checking it out.
yeah,
See if it
if
was
you
on.
do,
If it was on Polo, it would have come. I would have. I'm just saying
fair enough.
because it's in WhatsApp and I got to click on a video. It's like
True. We just put on it. We put on it. We put an extra room on the house. There's going to be some conversations going on over there too. So
it's a mansion of communication, bro.
not yet. I like it. It's the shack out back, right? We have to go back. It's the SOB, the shack out back.
Yeah, so
Gary, Rochelle, you have to go back to previous. Yeah, we were talking about shack out back. Was that for the ribs or the barbecue sauce or the kombucha? I
it
think that
was.
was our kombucha
It was,
made in the
and
shack out back.
we had a kombucha master.
We
Remember,
did. We've moved
Amy.
on.
I
Yeah,
won't
Amy's
mention their last name, but Amy was once our kombucha master.
for sure.
Okay,
Okay.
this was season 8, episode 7 of the Decoded podcast, the 313th episode. That's it. We're out.
Peace.
Peace.